Hello, this is Constantine 1959. I'm going to be talking about what Father had me doing about a year ago. For 9 months, he sent me to another state to visit churches, so I would learn what the churches were like today. The first church, people were friendly, but the Holy Spirit wasn't there. When the message was being told, the people were starting to stare at me. And the pastor kept staring at me. I noticed that the church was starting to feel cold and uncomfortable, like there was something evil in it. So then after the service, we shook hands and greeted people and told them and waved goodbye. So then we went to the second church on the next Sunday. We had just pulled up into the parking lot when the pastor noticed us. He was outside getting ready to go inside the church. He looked at me and said, "We don't have church for you right now. Come back later and come to the Spanish service." He had just judged us right off and thought that we were Hispanic. I spoke to him in English and told him that I wasn't Hispanic. And then he still said, "Your services are still at night, or perhaps you would like the church down the road." Father didn't have to tell me about this church. I noticed it right off what was wrong. So we went down the road to the next church. They were having a revival. And some of the people were friendly and some were spirit-filled. Then the pastor started to speak. And the first words out of his mouth was, "I need money for the church because the offering had been light lately. And we need to move into the new building soon." We felt pressure to give money. And the ushers, who usually are members of the church, well, they didn't look like members of a church, but like goons in a bad gangster movie. They were looking angry at people who were putting small amount offerings. Father told me what was happening in the church. The church was corrupt, and what they were doing with the money, well, I'm not going to tell you what Father told me. I have to do more work for him and don't want to die yet. So then we took a week off, and then we went to the next church. And at this church, the people were friendly, the church was spirit-filled, and the pastor were preaching the word. It had 3 preachers. So we kept going, and God told me that all were good preachers. However, Father said to me, "They feed my children, they teach my children, but the one thing that I have against them is their projects. They are building a new church when they own a church, a Christian school, a nightclub, and a coffee shop to stop at before you come in the main service hall and during the service." I watch videos that constantly ask for money and the importance of giving money. They even went as far as to pass out folders with agreements to pay offering amounts that you agree to pay each month, legally binding you, of course. So when the people signed the agreement, they had to pay the amount. If they didn't pay the amount, they got in trouble. When the people were having financial difficulties, started to default on the payments, the main pastor would stand up in front and said, you know the times are hard, but you did legally agree to pay this money, and you are going to have to make your agreement to pay this money. He also said that people who aren't paying their money ain't going to get their prayer rocks embedded in the foundation of our new church. Despite this kept going on a lot. Church, because I felt the Holy Spirit was still in it, so we kept going. Father showed me a lot of things. He taught me empathy. Like when people cry out to him, he allowed me to feel what that person was feeling. Father told me, I hear their cries. I then moved back to where I came from as my children were throwing major tantrums, telling me they didn't like it in that state. So I went back home and started going to the church that I had been before. But while I was gone, something changed. It was different. I remember before I left, the pastor was gone to a big conference. He was fired up and was finding ways to make God's church grow. When I came back, it hadn't grown at all. And suddenly, the pastor was able to buy a house when he hadn't had enough people or money before with the same amount of people attending. I thought it was strange, but I didn't say anything. He suddenly started having a person require the names and addresses and telephone numbers of everyone that was in his church and where they worked, and would ask every week. Father told me that evil had entered the church. The Holy Spirit wasn't there anymore. I went to the pastor and told him evil had entered the church. He said, thanks for telling me what Father said. Then the next week in service, he said, I don't believe in Genesis. I don't believe in angels came down and had relationships with women, and didn't believe in giants were born. I don't believe in Nephilim. There are no such things as demons, and I don't believe in the gift of discernment. Father told me, why should I bring the Holy Spirit to move here if evil dwells here and the pastor just denounced my word? That's when I felt I needed to leave the church and never look back. I asked Father and prayed for what he wanted me to do now. Father told me to move. And He told me that churches are corrupt. Not all, but most. He told me to leave the churches and that he soon will clean all the churches. Father says, keep praying, keep doing my work for me, and read my word, and tell my people about me. Try to bring my people back to me. Tell my children to wake up and serve me. Your time is running out. My wife had another vision and an hourglass, and it was almost empty. There was less than an inch of sand in it. I just had to tell you what Father wanted me to talk about. This is Constantine, 1959. Thank you for listening.